Hello everyone, I hope that you're all well and having a good week. I want to start off by, with great delight and happiness, welcoming Simon Weeder back home after a very long, difficult and extended stay in hospital. Everyone who knows Simon will confirm what a lovely and wonderful human being he is. And it's really been a hard few months witnessing Simon's struggle with his health, but also heartwarming and inspiring seeing the love and support and loyal, ongoing positivity, strength and care shown by his wife Leona over this very difficult time. So it's a source of enormous happiness to know that Simon is back home. Simon, welcome back. I also want to wish Mazel Tov to 3 bar mitzvahs that we celebrate this week. Akiva Pfeffer, Eliav Stafler, and Rafi Kruskal. Mazel Tov to each of you, and Mazel Tov to your lovely families. We should have all been celebrating together, but unfortunately we can't. Each family in its own way has found a way to make arrangements to celebrate in a very restricted manner currently possible. But when I spoke to all the families, and to Akiva, Eliav and Rafi, there was a commonality I heard in the way each of them described how they felt. They all appreciated that they could at least do something. They all also realized that the celebration was not the main thing. They realized that what was really matter was becoming bar mitzvah, becoming part of the adult Jewish people with all the responsibilities and privileges that that involves, and of using this occasion to reflect upon the gifts in their lives, the love of their parents and family, and their appreciation towards them and to Hashem. And finally, all of them realized that the simcha they felt, the joy and the celebration and happiness they could experience was not proportional to the scale or the grandeur of the party made, or how much was spent on the simcha. And perhaps these are insights which can emerge from Corona and that we can take with us as we continue forward. A large simcha celebrating with family and friends is a beautiful thing. No criticism meant of that. But perhaps we need to ask ourselves whether sometimes we go too far. Could we cut back a little? Do we unwittingly create pressures on ourselves or others which are not entirely healthy? Could we reduce expectations somewhat? And would so doing allow us to focus a little more on what really matters in a simcha, whether a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, or a wedding? Could we ourselves discover that the joy and happiness we feel when celebrating on these occasions is not in the least reduced by slightly lessening the external expression of celebration? We have to start somewhere, and that can only be with each and every one of us, independently asking ourselves these difficult questions. And if they ring true to us, each of us taking the responsibility to be the first in scaling back that little bit. All of this leads nicely into a thought in this week's Sedra regarding a mitzvah that applies to our bar mitzvah boys, and which will probably be one of the first mitzvahs they perform when they become adults. And I'm referring here to the mitzvah of tzitzis, described to us in this week's Parsha and read twice daily in the 3rd paragraph of Shema. Now tzitzis is clearly an important mitzvah. It somehow parallels and connects us to all the other 612 mitzvot in the Torah. The Parshat tells us through Isamosom was a chatem es kol mitzvahs Hashem vasisamosom. Through seeing the tzitzis, we will remember and reconnect to all the other mitzvahs and do them. And it's chosen as the 3rd paragraph of Shema. And yet, despite its evident importance, there's something a little confusing about the nature of the obligation. You know, the positive mitzvahs take 2 forms. There are those which are chiyuvi, absolute obligations, like the shofar, Shema, keeping Shabbos, eating matzah on Pesach. But there are others which are kiyumi. If we find ourselves in a certain situation or circumstance, then the mitzvah clicks in. If we own a house, then we have to put a mezuzah up. If we eat a meal of bread, then we have to bench. And similarly, if we wear a 4-cornered garment, then we need to attach tzitzis. Which means to say that we could go through our whole lives and never fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzis. We could simply avoid wearing a 4-cornered garment and never have to fulfill this obligation. It is us, the Jewish people, who accepted upon ourselves as a midat chasidut, initially as a pietic practice, and then as an expectation that we should wear tzitzis. So tzitzis is so important. Why is it that the Torah didn't make it an absolute obligation, and instead waited for us as the Jewish people to step forward and begin fulfilling it, putting ourselves into the circumstances that would obligate us to do it? Now there's another question or difficulty around the mitzvah, which is that uniquely the fulfillment of this mitzvah takes 2 different forms, each with their own bracha. One is the talit, the large external robe with which we're familiar, which we wear in shul, and upon which we make the bracha of atifa, of wrapping or enveloping ourselves. And the other is the tzitzis, the talis cotton, the small undergarment worn, upon which we make a completely separate bracha. So why these two forms of the mitzvah with two separate brachas when ultimately one is fulfilling one obligation? And the answer to this question is based upon the slightly nuanced and difficult relationship that we have in Judaism with clothing. Clothing was first introduced, as we are told in the story, after the sin, the failure of Adam Harishon. And the very nature and the very naming of clothing indicates this complex relationship. Beged, meaning clothing, also means begidah, betrayal. Me'il, a shirt, also translates as trespass. And malbush, clothing, also is linked to the word of embarrassment, as explained so beautifully by Samson Raphael Hirsch. We wear clothing for cover, for protection, physically from the elements, and emotionally for our modesty. But that's only one way of describing clothing, kasus, because clothing also is about how we portray ourselves, the image we give over, how we perhaps sometimes want to cover ourselves up and project an appearance. Clothing allows us not just to portray ourselves, but betray ourselves, to lose our sense of self. Hence, the more dangerous language also used to describe it. We can use clothing well, but we can use it poorly. And these are the two talisos, the two ways of wearing the garments of four corners. We can wear it in public, atifa, the talis, when we are submerged as part of a community and part of Klal Yisrael. A Baal Tefillah, a chazan, stepping forward to lead the prayers, representing the Jewish people, has to wear a talis. But there's also the talis cotton, worn under our clothes, almost as underwear, which is about relating to ourselves, relating to Hashem's constant presence in our day-to-day life, worn constantly whether we are at work or school or just socializing, worn to carry us through the day as an internal reminder of our values. And this is why it's a mitzvah kiyumis. It's a mitzvah which we have to choose to take on ourselves, to express ourselves internally from within, the personal choice of clothing that we wish to adopt. And what is the message of tzitzis? It only applies to a four-cornered garment, clearly not natural, clearly man-made and manufactured. And normally in the weaving process, as strings are interwoven, one needs to tie up the loose threads, create a seam or a knot, otherwise it will unravel. But the tzitzis symbolically indicate us that there are still some threads left unwoven, that the garment is never completely finished. The world we live in is incomplete. Ba'arakim lasos. Hashem created a world upon which there's still the responsibility of us to do something. There's always more. Even once we're wearing clothes which physically covers us up, once we've taken care of our most basic needs for shelter and protection, clothing, it's not enough. We still need those tzitzis. It's still incomplete. Now we need to take care of our spiritual clothing, of the moral and ethical beings we wish to be. And so this, my dear Bar Mitzvah boys, is the message I want to give to you and to all of us. Wear your clothes well. Clothes can be used to deceive, to present ourselves differently to how we really are. And sometimes that's a good thing. There are aspects of our lives and of ourselves that are meant to remain private, are meant to be covered, sanua and modest. But that needs to be balanced with authenticity, with being true to ourselves, proud of our values, and with the strength to express externally that which we know to be true and right and proper internally. To wear the undergarments of tzitzis with us, no matter what, no matter where we go, as we go through life, as we go through parties, as we do whatever we're doing, always reminding ourselves of what we are inside. And finally, the message of tzitzis, the strings left hanging, incomplete, the threads untied, the reminder that the world we live in isn't perfect. So now it's up to you, to each and every one of us, to do our best. Mazel Tov, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Good Shabbos.